Good afternoon. My name is Eric Acebo, and we'll be presenting the context of the issue of the COVID-19 pandemic and how politicians have set safety measures such as wearing masks, social distancing, and public lockdowns since beginning in March 2020. Next is going to be the sources.
So our source was the Fox News Channel, and specifically Tucker Carlson on his Tucker Carlson Tonight Show. Fox News was launched in 1996 and originally was claiming to be fair and balanced, but in 2016 they changed their slogan to most watched, most trusted. And it's now known that Fox News leans towards the right and has strong ties to many leaders in the Republican Party, and specifically Tucker Carlson is a conservative and proudly endorses President Trump and the Republican Party. For arguments, his overall main claim in this video is that lockdowns across America are full of hypocrisy. His arguments are inductive because his methods of reasoning involve his premises, which are able to supply evidence, but cannot fully prove his conclusion is true. And so I broke down the video into three main arguments. His first argument to back up his claim is that the mandates for coronavirus are destroying the living and doing more harm than good. And then next, he argues that the leaders who are recommending these COVID mandates are power-hungry leaders who are trying to cancel Christmas. And he goes through different instances of how mayors have been hypocritical. And lastly, he ends by arguing that the lockdowns are not working, and he gives evidence to support this argument.
So the first use of a rhetorical device is hyperbole. When Tucker Carlson states that movement itself is illegal, this is obviously an extreme exaggeration, and its purpose was to evoke an emotional response and be used as a scare tactic. The next rhetorical device was the use of a downplayer, which we have a clip for.
Elected apparently on the strength of her fascinating name. She has no other obvious qualification.
This rhetoric was used purposely because it makes Mayor Breed and her opinion both look unimportant but also incorrect, and this was used as a way to make Tucker Carlson's opinion appear more, valid by downplaying others.
Continuing with the rhetorical devices, the next example is of a downplayer where Jennifer Nuzzo tweeted, "In this moment, the public health risks of not protesting to demand an end to systemic racism greatly exceed the harms of the virus." Here, Jennifer Nuzzo is discrediting the significance of the danger and risks of the virus spreading by comparing it to the possible harm of not rioting for a political and humanitarian cause. The next example is of a hyperbole again, and we have a clip for you.
We're likely to lose another 250,000 people dead between now and January.
This sounds like an unrealistic exaggeration of the number of people estimated to die from coronavirus in only a 1-month period. This is near the same amount of people who have died in the United States from March until now, which is estimated at 292,000. The last rhetorical device we have is a loaded question where Tucker Carlson asks, if lockdowns work, why haven't they worked so far? Is the lesson that we need a whole lot more of what hasn't been working so far? That does not work. This question implies that after doing a lockdown and the results showing that the numbers are only rising more, it may not be ideal to do the same thing again. Based on the rhetorical devices used in this news segment, there is a significant evidence presented regarding the hypocrisy of politicians making the decisions to lock down regions across America. However, Tucker Carlson's sarcasm throughout the entire video implies that he is biased in the direction that lockdowns have no benefit in slowing the spread of the virus. He does not provide specific evidence towards the actual effects and benefits of having a stay-at-home order. It does seem like he is presenting this information on purpose to sway the audience in the direction that he believes is true.
So for critical thinking fallacies, the first example was critical thinking fallacy of argument ad hominem. It was a tweet by epidemiologist and senior scholar at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, Dr. Jennifer Nuzzo, but he never introduces her with her actual title. Instead, he introduces her by saying she's not an actual physician, but she does boast that she's a climate activist. The second fallacy is an argument from outrage, which attempts to convince us by making us angry rather than providing evidence. And here's the clip for that.
So there's a consensus here. All the experts agree. The things that they like are perfectly safe, indeed encouraged, but the things they don't like are deadly, catastrophic, in fact.
So as most of us know, Fox viewers are generally conservative and disapprove of the lockdowns as they believe it violates their rights. Making the statement that officials are locking them down for no actual reason other than political beliefs would make them angrier. Then we have the fallacy of the lonely fact, where Tucker says that all experts agree after quoting one person, the head of the CDC, Dr. Walke, who said that the best thing for Americans is for these upcoming holidays is to stay at home and not travel. There was no legitimate consensus in which every single expert agreed that this is what needed to be done. He used the statement of one expert and made a generalization about the whole group. And lastly, we have guilt by association. So Dr. Henry Walke from the CDC made a statement. And from the previous example about staying home for the holidays, Tucker informs the audience that he is affiliated with Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, the institute that made statements a few months before in support of BLM protests, despite the threat of COVID spreading in large gatherings. He's trying to associate Dr. Walke with BLM, an organization he knows viewers dislike, leading viewers to dismiss Dr. Walke's suggestion. So overall, he just seems to have used these all intentionally and was pretty successful with his viewers because they're already known not to trust the experts in general.
So some of the biases that we were able to identify were confirmation bias, in-group bias, and overconfidence effect. With confirmation bias, he attached more weight to the considerations that he believed supported his claim. So Tucker made the claim that, the virus isn't as dangerous as politicians are making it out to be. Otherwise, they would stop going out and stop living their life, as usual. And then with in-group bias, Tucker formed a negative opinion about those that don't belong in his group. So in this case, he criticized everyone who was a Democrat, or in some cases that, supported the Black Lives Matter movement. And finally, with the overconfidence effect, Tucker displayed an overestimate of his knowledge on the subject, so much so that he didn't provide much evidence to support his claims. And now moving on to the conclusion. To conclude, we agreed that the arguments weren't convincing. Tucker made exaggerated claims, which he provided no evidence for. And then we identified various fallacies and biases, which made him less credible, and he's not a reliable source to provide information from both points of view. And the biggest issue we found with his arguments were that his arguments were more emotion-based rather than logic-based. So that concludes our presentation. Thank you.